What if I told you that beyond the cold stone walls of a medieval convent, devotion rotted into madness, that inside candlelit corridors meant for prayer, a noble-born nun transformed sacred vows into an empire of suffering? This is no legend whispered to frighten children. This is a wound in history, one that still seeps through cracked stone and forgotten prayers. Elizabeth of Palatinate was born into power velvet, cradles, silver crosses, a childhood steeped in incense and whispered Latin. But behind those solemn eyes hid something restless, something cruel. As a girl, she played with wooden effigies, wrapping them in cloth and pricking them until splinters of red painted her fingers. When her nursemaid died, face frozen in terror, rumors flickered, but the family's crest smothered every question. At 15, Elizabeth entered the convent of St. Agidia. By 17, she ruled it. Nobles sent their daughters to be shaped by her piety. They believed she offered discipline, salvation, and virtue, but Elizabeth worshipped a different gospel, pain as purification. It began quietly. A girl named Latte dared to speak during prayer. Elizabeth led her to a stone cell, locked the door. Only one short, strangled scream escaped. Latte returned days later, gaze hollow, body trembling. And so the gospel spread not by word but by terror. Beneath Elizabeth's bed lay an iron box, cords, spiked instruments, a Bible covered in frantic notes scrawled in red ink. Her sermons twisted love into punishment. She starved students, then forced them to chant scriptures until they fainted, their lips split and bleeding. Forget a verse. Her thin, ice-cold fingers tightened around throats until words died in air. Outside, the townspeople only heard murmurs. Discipline, they said. God's house must be kept in order. They did not see the bruises hidden beneath wool habits, nor smell the coppery scent clinging to the prayer room. One winter, Maria fled barefoot, gown-torn, blood on the snow. Caught near the woods, Elizabeth baptized her anew in ice water until her breathing turned ragged and blue. When Maria awoke, she whispered of the burning angel Elizabeth haloed not in light but in wrath. Then came Father Matias, a traveling friar. He sensed something wrong in the students' eyes. Their words rehearsed their silences, louder than screams. A mute orphan named Elsa pressed a crumpled drawing into his palm, a woman crowned by flame standing over a pit of faceless souls. One night, Matias followed Elizabeth down into the catacombs. By candlelight, he discovered iron chains bolted to damp walls, blood pooled black on stone. A wooden kneeler spiked with nails, its surface dark with years of suffering. And worse still, a ledger of names, each crossed out or marked by symbols. All were children. All were gone. Matias fled, carrying the ledger into the night, heart pounding with the weight of truth. In nearby villages, he searched for these children. Families spoke of sudden illness, quiet funerals, but no graves were shown. Fear sealed every lip. Back at the convent, Elizabeth declared a holy season of reckoning. Students were forced to kneel on raw stone, stripped of food, warmth, and hope. The faintest disobedience drew punishment, public and cruel. Helena, a baron's daughter, prayed in Latin but stumbled on a word. Dragged away, she returned days later, hands wrapped in bloody bandages. She never wrote again. One nun's sister, Agnes, dared to confess doubts. The next dawn, they found her floating face down in the garden well. Elizabeth called it tragic. The others lowered their eyes and learned silence was survival. Father Matias returned with a forged decree to inspect again. Elizabeth greeted him coldly, eyes glinting like frost. That night, a servant led Matias into the crypt once more. Fresh blood, a stone slab wiped clean too recently. And on the wall, Dominic Liberonos, Lord deliver us. Matias took the ledger and fled. Elizabeth discovered the theft by dawn. Her rage simmered deadly and quiet. She summoned the girls to a midnight ritual, forcing Elsa to kneel on shards of glass. The church finally responded. Soldiers marched at dusk. Smoke curled from the chapel as they arrived. Inside, silence. In the catacombs, they found girls, chained, starved, praying through cracked lips. On the walls, sketches of angels with knives for wings. But Elizabeth herself had vanished, leaving only a blood-soaked Bible open to a single underlined verse, "I will show you the way even through fire." Rumors spread. Elizabeth fled to France disguised as a widow. She led a cult in the Black Forest. Her own disciples killed her. Months later, a hunter discovered a decayed chapel buried in vines. Inside, a faceless corpse clutched a rosary bearing the Palatinate crest. On the wall, in dried blood, "Sanguis Lux Redemptio," bloodlight redemption. The church buried the body in secret. No funeral, no name. But the terror did not die. Locals whispered of hymns sung at night, a veiled figure glimpsed in ruins, bells tolling without wind. Survivors carried scars deeper than flesh. Helena wandered her family estate murmuring verses backward, drawing angels with broken wings on every wall. Elsa the mute girl vanished one night, leaving behind a torn ledger page. Father Matias rose within the church but died gripping his crucifix so tightly it cut his palms. His last words, "We thought she served God, but she served something else." Centuries passed, but shadows lingered. Restoration teams uncovered a hidden room, a virgin's statue with eyes gouged out. Beneath it, words carved into stone. "Deliver us not from evil, let us be reborn through it." Historians shuddered it matched no known scripture. Legends of the Gray Sisterhood spread women who believed suffering led to transcendence. Across Europe, nuns' vanished children appeared with strange scars. Chapels collapsed to reveal hidden torture chambers. At each site, the same name, Elizabeth. She was never caught, never judged by mortal hands. But her horror lives on in whispered prayers in shadows of cathedrals, in the quiet terror that devotion can breed darkness. Psychologists call her an early case of spiritual sadism. Others suspect something older, that she sought not cruelty, but transformation, a twisted salvation through suffering. Tourists still visit St. Agidia's ruins. Some hear chanting below. Some feel unseen eyes. A few flee whispering they saw a woman in gray behind them. Locals leave bread and salt on the convent's anniversary, but dare not speak the victims' names. Names they say have power. Elizabeth of Palatinate became a ghost, a myth, a warning carved into stone, and silence that evil does not always howl from forests or rise from hellfire. Sometimes it kneels beside you, clutching a rosary, whispering scripture. And if we forget, if we look away, it will rise again, veiled, sanctified, and hungering. In the darkest hour when the wind dies and candles flicker, some say you can hear her words echo through cold stone. Let the innocent suffer. Let their pain cleanse the world. And in that moment, history is not past, it is alive, waiting for us to remember or to kneel. And so the stone walls of St. Agidia still stand weathered and silent, yet never truly empty. Elizabeth of Palatinate may have vanished, but the shadow she cast remains whispering across centuries that evil does not always roar or bare its teeth. Sometimes it prays beside us. Sometimes it wears the robes we trust most. The story of Elizabeth is not just a tale of cruelty hidden behind candlelight. It is a brutal reminder that blind faith without compassion can become a weapon. That silence in the face of suffering can turn us into accomplices. And that monsters often rise not from darkness itself, but from devotion twisted by fear and power. If we remember her story not to glorify horror, but to confront it, then perhaps the veil can finally be lifted, and history will not be doomed to kneel again. Because in the end, true faith does not demand suffering. True devotion does not breed silence. And true holiness does not fear the light. If this darkness haunts you too, let it be a call to question, to speak, and to see what hides behind the veil. Because sometimes remembering is the only way to stop it from happening again.